Hello and welcome to Gareth Icke Tonight. Freedom of speech in the not-so-United Kingdom continues to make headlines across the world. Father Ted co-creator Graham Linehan has been arrested at Heathrow Airport over posts on his X account. The television writer was reportedly detained by 5 armed police officers when he landed in England in relation to things he'd written on his social media back in April. This comes just a year after the mass arrests and imprisonments for social media posts following the horrific Southport killings. There is a normalization of the police wading their giant boots into people's right to speak freely. So what had Graham said that was so horrific that it warranted 5 armed police officers to arrest him and then to interrogate him so intensely that his blood pressure rose to a level that required hospital treatment? Must have been pretty bad, right? Well, let's see. He posted, if a trans-identifying male is in a female-only space, he is committing a violent, abusive act. Make a scene, call the cops, and if all else fails, kick him in the balls. 5 armed police officers. Now, I've got no major skin in the game for Graham on a personal level. Father Ted was amazing, and I applaud him for speaking out on women's issues in the face of radical gender ideology. I don't agree with his stance on Israel-Palestine, and I haven't missed the irony of him speaking about his freedom of speech and freedom of expression while simultaneously attacking and smearing anti-genocide protesters for expressing theirs. But whether I have skin in the game for someone or whether I don't isn't the point. If someone doesn't have the right to freedom of speech, then there is no freedom of speech. I might not agree with what someone says, but I agree that they should be able to say it, even if it offends me, because they're just words. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. They were literally taught to us as a little mantra in infant school, and yet so many have forgotten to apply it. The kingmaker, Elon Musk, President-in-waiting J.D. Vance, and even Donald Trump himself have waded in on the free speech and free expression debate in the UK. In fact, it's pretty much all Elon Musk, or whoever really controls his X account, posts about lately. Now, they're right, of course, to highlight what's going on in our country, and they're right to call out our selected politicians for supporting it. But again, the irony of Trump calling out free speech and expression while revoking visas for people having trawled their social media and found anti-Israel posts, and then signing an executive order that would mean a year imprisonment for anyone that burnt an American flag, isn't lost on me. Of course, the Trump supporters have all jumped up to say flag burning shouldn't be protected by freedom of speech, because when you burn the flag, you aren't simply burning something you bought off Amazon, you're burning the memories of those brave men and women that gave their lives for that flag. But as the late comedian Bill Hicks said, a flag is a piece of cloth, and they might have died for freedom, which, by the way, is the freedom to burn the fucking flag. So why are the American so-called elite chirping up on freedom of speech in the UK? Why do they care? I mean, I guess Musk could claim that it's because it affects his X app in the country, but why do apparent America firsters like Trump and Vance care? Because it's part of a psyop. A psyop I've been seeing play out for a while. People were waking up to the uni party even before the COVID nonsense, but that accelerated the awakening massively. People had twigged in enormous numbers that it doesn't matter who you vote for, the government gets in. And so in America in 2016, they introduced the illusion of an outsider, someone that was going to take down the deep state, someone that was going to fight the globalists and fight for the average American. Now, average American isn't a term I like because I don't actually believe that anyone is average, but you get my point. That, of course, couldn't have been further from the truth, as Donald isn't an outsider, he isn't fighting the globalists, he's up to his neck in the deep state, and his willingness to do whatever Israel tells him while claiming to be America first is testament to that. But it's a play that worked in America, and it's a play that we're witnessing here in the UK now. We're nearing the end of the game with a consistently stated goal year of 2030 just 5 years away. So the attempts to bring in the digital dystopia are ramping up. But the global establishment in all its different forms can't achieve their goals by force. There aren't enough of them in terms of ratio to the population. So they need to divide us against one another. They need to gaslight us, make us believe in the fear porn that they constantly throw out of our television boxes, the fear of war, terrorism, pandemics, climate change. hostile alien attacks, whatever it takes to fool the population into handing over their freedoms and standard of living in exchange for the illusion of safety. But the final end of level boss goal is to have everyone connected and controlled through artificial intelligence, through digital ID and social credit scores. Because at that point, the ratio of them to us becomes less of a barrier to that dystopia. We will digitally be excluded from functioning if we fail to comply. It's the ultimate control grid, and it's been built around us on a daily basis for decades. Now, while some have been cheering on the expansion of draconian controls because, their tribalistic nature has led them to cheer on the demise of their political and social enemies, others have stood up and spoken out against it. They can see the train hurtling towards the car, stranded on the level crossing, almost in slow motion, and they've been sounding the alarm. Those people, overwhelmingly, would be considered of the right, or old school conservatives, or even, to be fair, an old school liberal, because the Overton window is shifted to such a point that labels mean very little these days. But in the case of these three groups I've mentioned, they certainly aren't voting for Labour, not anymore. And they certainly aren't accepting or supporting the will of Labour and of Keir Starmer. They will rebel against it. The people have to welcome the vampire into their homes willingly. And if the establishment want the people to agree to their digital imprisonment, it can't have been under Biden and Harris. It can't have been them selling it, and it can't be Labour selling it. It has to be someone they trust, someone they see as an outsider, someone they see as one of them, someone they believe, wrongly, is anti-establishment, someone that sells it as an answer to a problem they care about. The southern border crisis in the US, mass unfiltered immigration into the United Kingdom. Trump fitted that bill in the US, and Reform and Nigel Farage seem to fit the bill here. Former Prime Minister Liz Truss even said this week that we need a Trump regime here in the UK. They always tell us, right? If polling across the country is to be believed, should there be a general election tomorrow, Reform would be the next government and Nigel the next Prime Minister. Nigel, the man who wanted Tony Blair to be COVID vaccine czar and banged his pots and pans at 8 p.m. for the NHS as they were slapping do not resuscitate orders on everyone and were blocking family members from seeing dying relatives. The chap who clapped as the country was destroyed all around us through COVID tyranny would be the leader of the UK, with Reform MP Richard Tice almost certainly acting as his deputy. The same Richard Tice that supported COVID vaccine mandates on NHS staff and said he didn't see how they could remain employed if they refused. These people are not the saviours, and their deathly silence during COVID freedom destruction proves that. I care not what they say and do when it's socially and politically acceptable to say and do it. I care where they stand when it matters. I care where they stand when the wagons are circling, when the metaphorical bombs are falling, and they were nowhere to be seen. I spoke to a former colleague of Farage's last week, and they informed me that Nigel and AI dystopia driving force Peter Thiel of Palantir and PayPal mafia fame go way back. And Thiel visited Farage in London just after Epstein didn't kill himself. Things are suddenly starting to make sense in my mind now. If the election were tomorrow, Reform would win. Not a huge majority, but they would win. But the election isn't tomorrow. It's in 2029. So we have another 4 years of intentional destruction, population demoralization, mass immigration, energy and farming decimation, raising taxes, speech policing, genocide supporting, and Russia poking Labour. Think how large the majority would be for a Reform government if the trajectory of this country continues as it currently is, and the people of this nation continue to see 5 armed police officers arresting television writers for tweets. That would put Peter Thiel's mate in Downing Street with an enormous mandate just a year before the 2030 digital deadline. It's probably nothing.